I don't know how you found it, but you just landed on one of those videos that could easily make a huge difference in your business.
Are you sure about that?
In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to find motivated sellers with some top secret sources of data that the vast majority of people out there don't even know about. And because most people don't know about it, this can give you a big leg up on the competition. The company is called Versium, which is a data technology company that lets marketers better identify and reach their ideal prospects across many different marketing channels. Versium isn't really in the real estate business. They're not trying to target you and me as real estate investors to use their service. Their customers are much bigger companies, a lot more mainstream businesses. And as a result, their marketing materials don't really cater to real estate investors like us. And that's why a lot of real estate investors don't even know about them. But as I'm about to show you, this company can give you access to some jaw-dropping information on anyone in the US to help you better understand who is actually on your marketing list and whether they're actually the people you want to be contacting in the first place. And once you do know who you want to contact, it can make it very inexpensive and very quick to get every possible piece of contact information on them that you can. And I'll just say, Versium isn't for everyone, I don't think. After looking at this service for a while and using it a bit, I think it makes a lot of sense for at least two kinds of different people. People who need to do a lot of skip tracing for the people on their list, finding their phone numbers and their email addresses, and they want to do it as cheaply as possible compared to a lot of other skip tracing services out there. And it also makes sense for people who want to understand who is on their list and get a lot more information on those people. And you don't have to do both of these things. You can kind of do one or the other or both if you're using Versium. And it's for people who want to tap into some of the psychological aspects of finding motivated sellers with information that simply can't be obtained anywhere else. And I'll show you how Versium can serve both of those types of people in just a minute. But before we get into that, I want to show you the pricing just so you understand how this works, how much it costs, and how I think it generally makes more sense for people who are doing higher volume, like, 4,000 or more new leads per month. So if you're just kind of a hobbyist, if you're not really, taking your real estate investing business that seriously, or you're not doing this as your full-time job, or you're not sending out thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of mail or marketing messages through other mediums per month, then this might not make sense for you. But it's up to you to figure out who you are. If you do want to give this a try, let me show you a little bit more about how this works. So right here on the Versium homepage, if we go up here to pricing, just take a quick look at this. So you pay for this by the year. So it's basically a 12-month commitment, and the cheapest plan here costs $3,600 a year. So this isn't necessarily cheap, but if you're actually planning to use this, it's totally worth the cost, and you'll understand why in just a second when I start showing you how this works. So the idea with Versium is you can do skip tracing for a crazy cheap price. You might be used to paying like 15 cents per skip trace lead, or 12 cents, or even 10 cents if you get a really good deal. With Versium, you can effectively do that for 1.7 cents per lead. So not 17 cents, 1.7 cents per lead to get either their phone numbers or their email addresses. That's a huge savings if you're somebody who does a lot of skip tracing. And even if you don't want to do skip tracing at all, you can pull a lot more information out of your list and understand who the people are on your list, some of their financial habits, their FICO scores, their age, their gender, their political affiliation, any religious background. It's all right here, and I'll show you how it works. So because, as I mentioned earlier, Versium isn't really in the market to try to get real estate investors to use their service. There is one person that I met who actually introduced me to Versium and explained a lot about how it works. He was very patient with me. I was a very slow learner, and he explained things to me several times. So he's an awesome guy to work with. His name is Joshua Goddard, and I've actually got a form here that you can fill out. If you're interested in this, it's at REtipster.com/Versium. And if you fill this out, it's going to go to him or whoever is in his place. Say if you're watching this 5 years into the future, and if Joshua's gone, this is going to go to the right person, and they can get in touch with you and help you figure out if this makes sense for you and that kind of thing. And if you fill out this form and work through him, you can make sure that you get the right thing at the right price. And also, one very important thing to note, Joshua actually put together an amazing deal where you can get an additional 15,000 matches for free on top of your annual allowance just by going through this link and signing up here. Seriously, this is an incredible value if you're ever going to use Versium, do not go through the regular channels. You'll definitely want to sign up through this link to get those free credits. This video is not going to talk about every possible thing Versium can do because it can do a lot and it's used by many different industries. So, a lot of times when you go to one of these skip tracing services and you pay 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever cents per lead that they find, I can't speak for all of them, but many of them are using Versium to do that. And they're only paying Versium 1.7 cents per lead, if not a lot less than that, depending on what kind of volume they sign up for. And the same thing goes for you. So this pricing page I just showed you a minute ago, that $3,600 per year, that's like the lowest volume plan you can possibly do. If you pay more, you can get it even cheaper per lead than 1.7 cents per lead. And of course, if you're watching this years into the future, the prices will most likely go up at some point. So the prices might not match exactly what I'm showing you here, but in principle, the website should continue working the same way. And a lot of companies that use this service, again, they're not in real estate at all. It might be like a political organization or like some giant company that sells who knows what, and they're just trying to contact people with as much information as they can get on them. Maybe they're even taking this stuff and trying to start running Facebook ads to them. So it might not even be used for direct mail or texting or fill in the blank. There's lots of different uses for this data, and this data is collected on pretty much everybody as long as they're plugged into the internet and all the different financial systems in the US. So it's pretty useful to have this stuff. Another thing to note is that Versium is not like a wholesaler or aggregator of data where they get it from some other service and then resell it to you. They actually own like 95% of the data that you'll find here. And by paying for this subscription, you're actually getting a license to use that data while you're paying for the subscription. So if you ever like stop using the service and move on, you have to purge all that data from your system. You're not allowed to keep using it. Luckily for real estate investors, the value of that data kind of goes down and down and down as time goes on anyway. So that's not necessarily a huge issue, but that's another just interesting, unique thing to be aware of in terms of how this works. And also when you load lists to Versium, like I'm about to do here, so they don't ingest that data and use it for their own purposes. They basically just use it to, say, okay, now we're going to find every possible piece of information we can on each one of these people that you just uploaded, and it will then find that from its sources and bring it back as of that point in time. It's not like it's using month-old data or something like that from some other service that doesn't update it very often. It's like about as current and accurate as is possible to get. So first of all, let's start with this skip tracing piece of it. Let's say you're somebody who, you got a list from DataTree or PropStream or one of these data services, and you have the property owner's name, their mailing address, their property address, and a bunch of other information on their property. But you might not have their phone number or their email address, and you want to get that stuff. So then you can do cold calling or send out text messages or send them emails or something even more fancy like online ads or something like that. So one way you can do that is to go down here, and we're just going to skip this whole first section, and we're going to go right here to where it says Contact Append Plus. So I have a list that I just downloaded from PropStream yesterday. And it doesn't really matter where you get your list from as long as it has at least one of these things. Versium is going to need at least this amount of stuff in order to do its job. Say you have just a list of email addresses, nothing else. That would work. Or just a list of phone numbers and nothing else. That could work too. Or just a list of the postal address, city, state, and zip. Or the first name, last name, city, and state. Any one of these things would be fine. So doesn't really matter where the list comes from as long as it has this bare minimum amount of data. Also, the list that you upload does have to be a CSV file, which usually is not a problem, but I tried uploading an Excel file yesterday and it just didn't understand, it didn't work. So make sure it's a CSV file. So I'm gonna go and grab this list and upload it for you here. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we'll bring it right in here and we're gonna upload this thing and it says list imported. Now we'll go to the next step. And most of these lists that you get will have a header, and the header is like first name, last name, mailing address, property address, just to, identify everything beneath it in that column. So that's how my list works. So I'm going to make sure that this bubble is checked. Right here, I generally don't do anything. This is just saying whether you want it to pay attention to certain fields and how to label them in terms of what information is in there. And from what I've seen, this seems to do that automatically. I don't really have to play around with this whole lot. But if, for example, it said first name and then it showed like a mailing address, that would be wrong. You would want to make sure you correct that kind of thing before you move on to the next step. So we'll click next step here. And one way you can do this is either household level match or individual level match. I think most people would probably want to do individual level match because we want to find all this information on each individual person, not just the house that maybe 4 or 5 or 6 people live inside of. So I'm going to do the individual level match, and we can either do email addresses or phone numbers, one or the other, or both. And I will say that for each time it finds an email address, that is considered one category match. For each time it finds one or more phone numbers, that is also considered a category match. So just be aware that every time there is a category match, that's going to deduct one of those 1.7 cent credits, or whatever the cost is at the time that you're using it. If you're not really actually going to use email addresses, then don't select that if you just want phone numbers, because it's going to cost you a lot less, and vice versa. And over here, you can either do the best phone number or the mobile phone number only. For example, if you only want to send text messages, then you wouldn't want landlines or that kind of thing. So if texting is your thing, you could do this, or you could get multiple phone numbers, and it doesn't really cost you any more to do this. And the benefit of having multiple phone numbers is that it's just going to pull every possible phone number it can find. It doesn't mean all those numbers are going to be active or still usable or anything like that, but it's just going to pull as much information as it can. It's also going to identify what type of phone number each one of those are. That's probably what I would normally do. I just pull as much information as you can, and then you can decide which numbers you want to use. I know, for example, if you're ever skip tracing from like direct skip, that's the kind of thing that it will give you. So that's what I'm going to use here. And we'll go ahead and click next step. Oh, also on this previous screen here, you'll notice that this little bar graph shows up here. And it's basically giving you an idea for what the match rate is probably going to be. I don't know if that's like 100% accurate, but it at least gives you an idea for how much information is out there based on what you're trying to get. Same thing with email addresses. So anyway, actually, let me just select both of these just so I can show you what it's going to give us. And it says we have estimated category matches of about 314. And again, we want to do individual level matches. So there we go. Click the next step here, and it says you can keep your audiences and lists organized inside projects. So, if you have a separate audience in one state and county versus another state and county, and you want to keep them separate and organized and just understand who you're talking to, you can state that right here. Just say example audience, and we're going to create a new project for that. And let's click create. It says your list is in queue. It will be picked up shortly. So I guess this just depends on how many people out there are trying to do skip tracing right now, and we might have to wait a few minutes for this. Okay, there we go. So estimated time remaining is 1 minute. It's not too bad. It's honestly a lot faster than if I was using some other data service to do this kind of skip tracing. So we'll wait and see what happens when this comes back. Now here it is. So we can check out this match report. We can get list insights to understand, what kinds of people are on a list and where they live. Kind of interesting. So let's go ahead and just export this thing as a new CSV file, and we will see what it's going to tell us. So this whole agree to terms of service thing. So I believe this is what I mentioned earlier about how you're basically licensing this data from Versium. So you're only going to use it, during your active subscription. Go ahead and download this thing. Let's see what it looks like. And if we bring it over here, so it actually is going to give us 2 different CSV files. And the difference is basically just in how it specifies the information on what you're looking at. This one right here where it says contact append phone by line type. So let's go ahead, go over here. So right here, this is the information that we just paid for. So we've got email addresses here, and we've got phone numbers here. And this specifies whether it's mobile phone 1, mobile phone 2, or mobile phone 3. As you can see, most people, if they have anything, it's just mobile phone 1, but sometimes you'll get 2 and 3. In most cases, mobile phone 1 is probably going to be your best bet in terms of actually getting a hold of that person. But like for me, I've got, I think, 6 different phone numbers for all the different business stuff I've got going on. So I would probably be one of these weirdos with a bunch of phone numbers. And then it also labels when you're looking at a landline and what those numbers are. So there's that. And then in this other version of the list, it's basically got the same information, but it doesn't specify the information in quite the right way. So either one can work, but there you go. So again, that was super cheap compared to any other skip tracing service I've ever heard of. So if you're somebody who does a whole lot of this stuff, it can make a lot of sense. If you're somebody who is just doing maybe 2,000 or 3,000 per month or less, then something like direct skip is probably a better bet for you, just based on volume usage and that kind of thing. So that's the skip tracing. Now let's go back down here. And now we're going to do what's called demographic append. And this is where you can get a whole lot of really interesting information about each person on your list. Things like how old they are, what their gender is, how expensive their house is, what their political affiliation is, what their credit score is, what kind of car they have. I mean, all kinds of stuff. As real estate investors, like, we don't even need a whole lot of this stuff, but this is the kind of thing that all kinds of different companies might want to know about their potential prospects so they can better target them and speak to them more effectively, understanding who they are and where they're coming from. So I'm going to go through the same process here. We're going to take that same original list that I got and upload it here. So we'll take this and drag it over here. And again, same thing where you just need to have this basic information on the list. Doesn't really matter where it came from as long as you have this stuff and it's up to date and accurate. And we'll click next step here. And this thing works pretty much the exact same way. Same thing that I just showed you before. Now, this is where you can identify which type of information you want to be able to pull out of this list. And you don't have to do all this. Like, for example, lifestyle and interests. This is going to show you like what kind of magazine subscriptions do they have and that kind of stuff, which for real estate investors, I mean, maybe there's a reason that matters, but I'm not really sure what that would be. So whichever one of these things you check and choose, anything it finds for any one of those 4 categories will be a category match. And that's going to cost you that 1.7 cent thing from all the credits that you got for that year. So if you don't want to waste credits, in my case, I would probably just do these top 2. I have a different file that I pulled where I did select all these. I can show you what that looks like in just a second. But just, if I was doing this for real, like as a land investor in my case, these are probably the 2 that I would pick. So go ahead and move on to the next step. Again, it will show you what the estimated matches are probably going to be, just so you understand what it's probably going to cost you before you do it. Click next step here. And we're going to use example audience, that same list that we just came up with a minute ago. And we'll do this and same thing. It's going to sit in the queue and it'll take, probably a few minutes for this thing to process and get through it. So sit here and wait till that's done. I would imagine if you have a list of like several thousand names to get through, it would probably take a little bit longer than that, but this is a fairly small list. We're not asking a whole lot from this one. So looks like it found 3,324 attributes appended. Go ahead and export this thing. We'll take a look at this, agree to that. Okay, so this is our list. I'm going to scroll over here and we'll see what is new on this thing. And this is where the new stuff is. So right here where it says individual level match, all the way over here to online education. So as you can see here, this part that I have highlighted in yellow, this is the basic demographic. This is going to give you their date of birth, their age range, their gender, their ethnic group, their religion, education level, occupation, the language that they speak, their marital status, whether there's a working woman in the household, whether there's a senior in the household, whether they're a single parent, if there are any children in the house, the number of children, young adults in the household, small office or home office, online purchasing indicator, not even really sure what that is, and then online education. Just think through, why would this stuff be useful? Well, let's say if you're looking for empty nesters, or if you're looking for people who are a certain age range, or if you're actually trying to contact people of a certain ethnic group for some reason, or a certain religion, whoever you are, and whatever you're thinking through in terms of what message you want to say and who you're trying to contact, you can just think to yourself, why would this be useful? Could this actually help me to better communicate with somebody or reach the right people or avoid spending money trying to reach the wrong people? And this next section over here, so this is the household, financial, and auto section. And this, I think, is probably even more useful for a lot of people, at least real estate investors, because it gives us a lot more insight into some of their spending habits or how comfortable they are with debt or what kind of credit cards they have, if they have credit cards at all. What is their credit score? How much do they purchase their home for? Is it a single family home or something else? Lots of stuff here that can be super useful. So I'll go ahead and highlight this in orange just so we can differentiate it. So we can see here whether or not they own or rent their home, and the household income, whatever that might be, their estimated net worth, the year that their home was built, the home purchase date, home purchase price, the dwelling type, their home value, the length of their residence at that home, the credit card holder bank, their number of credit lines, upscale card holder. I guess I don't really know what that means. If that's like, some kind of platinum or gold card or $1 million spending limit. I'm not really sure, but if nothing else, it could at least indicate that they're okay with credit cards at least. And then also what their credit rating is. This, I think, could be particularly useful, kind of similar to if you're trying to contact people on the delinquent tax list. I mean, this is definitely not the same thing, but it at least gives you some insight into their financial philosophy. And, if they're past due on things, it doesn't really tell us anything about, why that credit score is what it is. And that's always a very important set of information as well. But just looking at the number itself, it doesn't even tell you the exact number, but it just tells you the range that they're in. Say if you were only looking for people who are in some kind of financial distress, even having a low credit score, that doesn't necessarily mean they are. There could be something that happened to them 5 years ago that's not even relevant anymore, and it's still affecting their credit score today. But again, it gives you a heck of a lot more insight than just not having this at all. And then mortgage purchase amount. So it indicates what their mortgage amount was. Mortgage purchase loan type. So it says either conventional here or private party lender. I don't know if private party lender is like seller financing or some other non-conventional bank or something. I don't know. You can also see mortgage purchase interest rate type. I'm not seeing a ton of information for that particular column. Mortgage purchase date, it indicates when that date might have been. Again, these dates are not formatted right, but I believe that is like April 1, 2019, just looking at those numbers. And if they have a second mortgage, it would show you the amount of that. So lots of information here. Also like refinance stuff, whether they have a pool, what kind of car they have, and what the year that car was. I don't know how relevant that is to real estate people, but if you're in some other business where that matters, you know who you are. And again, this stuff was not that expensive to get, like 1.7 cents per category match. And, also you'll notice here, like a lot of these things, there's just nothing there. Like I see a lot of blank cells here. And whenever you see a blank one, you basically weren't charged for that. Just like any respectable skip tracing service, it's only going to deduct your credits when it actually brings back some information. So if you're worried about, I'm going to upload my list and I'm not going to get anything back, if that's the case, it's not really that big of a deal because you're not paying for this stuff when it doesn't return anything. So there's that. So this was another list I was working with yesterday. You can see the first two categories right here. And moving on over here, so I believe this is the lifestyle one, and it shows you like magazines, whether they get magazines and reading. I don't know if that means like what they read or if they read or don't read. I'm not really sure. Current affairs and politics, it just says yes and no. Mail order buyer, I guess that could be useful to know if you're a mail order business or something. Dieting and weight loss, travel, music, consumer. I think what this is talking about is what kinds of topics they're into. Like, did they get magazines about these things or do they subscribe to things about these topics? That's probably what they're getting at here. So that's the lifestyle one. And then over here where it says like religious donor, where it says like environmental donor or animal welfare donor or donor for arts and culture or religious donor, all this stuff kind of gives you an idea for what political things or religious things they're into. Party affiliation, it just says straight up whether they're a Democrat, Libertarian, Republican, Independent. Again, when that information is available. There are plenty of times when it just doesn't tell you. I have no idea, where they're getting this information. Say if you're somebody who voted Democrat in one election and then Republican in another election, if you're a swing voter like many people are, I'm not sure what they would say for that. Maybe nothing. But anyway, when that information is out there, wherever it's coming from, it'll show you that stuff right here. Yeah, I just wanted to show this to you guys because, if the wheels are turning in your head as they were in my head the first time I saw this, I was like, wow, this could be pretty useful. Like there's a lot of different ways that I could use this to more effectively contact the right people and say the right things to the right people, or avoid contacting the wrong people, or get whatever information I need to make sure I'm contacting that person. And I should also say, like, this isn't even everything Versium can do. Because remember, this is not really aimed at real estate investors. It's aimed at much bigger companies that do marketing in all kinds of different channels for all kinds of different purposes. You can also use this to like build an online audience. They have an API that can integrate with your CRM. So this all happens a lot more seamlessly. You don't even have to come to the website to do this stuff. So there's a lot here. And there's also these how-to videos that explain a lot about how to use Versium too, which I haven't even really checked these out yet, but I'm sure there's lots of helpful information here. And also you can always just talk to whoever your rep is at Versium. Again, Joshua Goddard is the one that I know, and he was super helpful to me just in helping me understand how to use this stuff. I asked him the same question multiple times and he patiently told me the same answer again and again until it finally stuck in my head. So yeah, again, if you guys want to check it out, and if you want to get this pricing that I showed you early on in the video, just go to retipster.com/Versium. It'll bring you to this form where you can fill it out, and this information will go to the rep at Versium, probably Joshua, and then they will get back to you and help you figure out if this is the right thing for you and how to get set up. So if that would be useful for you, there you go. This is something that would have been super useful to me had I known about it years ago. So if it's helpful to you, I wish you all the best. Thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.